All right, folks, this is where for many Trekkies it all began. Star Trek: The Next Generation kicked off with Encounter at Farpoint. And today, Craig and I are diving headfirst into this ambitious, weird, and occasionally baffling pilot episode. From Q's over the top courtroom drama to the Enterprise's awkward first mission, we're breaking down what's good, what's bad, and what's back crazy about this legendary start to TNG. So grab a cup of Earl Grey, hot, and let's get into it. Encounter at Farpoint in 1987 was the very first episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, so it had the tough job of introducing an entirely new crew, ship, and era of Star Trek. Here's our breakdown of the good, the bad, and the weird elements of this iconic episode. I am one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I'm Craig Houston.
I was going to say, tell them who you are.
Yeah. Yes. Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be.
How are you doing, Craig?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good to
It's
see you.
it's interesting doing this going back to pilot episodes, Lark. It's this one's going to be an interesting one.
Yes, yes. Well, I know we've talked about this a little bit in previous episodes, but contextually, this came out while you and I were at school together.
Yes.
And as Trekkers, it was a BFD,
Yes, we were like
a big
meerkats. We were like,
flipping
"Ooh, what's
deal.
this?"
Um,
But it's funny because I think there's a lot of people have a slight misnomer about the birth of the next generation because everybody says, "Oh, it's because of Star Trek 4 that the next generation exists because Star Trek 4 did so well and all the rest of it." And that's not quite the case because the plans for Next Generation actually date a year beforehand, just after Star Trek 3 came out.
right.
And it was early 86 where the initial talks were with Greg and Sam Strangers as well, because they were the ones who were first approached for doing the Star Trek spin-off series. It wasn't Gene Roddenberry.
Right. Okay.
And
Did not know
it was
that.
and it was actually their plan was to be set in the Kirk area with a lot of Klingon influence, and it wasn't on the Enterprise. So if anybody wants to find out more about that, there's a lot of stuff available if you use the old Google or if you actually check out a few of the known sources.
Mm, interesting. Interesting. Um, yeah, that would have been quite. I suspect quite a different show without Gene involved
Well, it
because
wouldn't. It
certainly,
wasn't on the Enterprise either.
really.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, oh. What would it have been set on a different ship then, or
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
okay? I mean, not a space station because that'd be a mad idea, right?
Yeah, I'll be absolute. That's a batshit one on its own. But funnily
Oh,
enough, though, when they did approach Gene to do it, that was, the brass up there. The title Star Trek: The Next Generation was already there before the concept actually happened.
right,
Then
right.
afterwards, they restarted thinking of the titles, but Next Generation was originally the original title for it.
Yes, yes. Now I do know that the original script for Farpoint itself was quite different
It was going to
from
be
what
it
we.
originally was pitched as a 1 hour rather than a 2 hour episode, and it was the
Yeah.
DC Fontana did the initial script for it, which was based on the Farpoint station. Gene Roddenberry then got hold of the script, expanded it to a 2 hour, did the wraparound on the front and back, and introduced the Q character.
Yes, yes, which is why it now feels a little bit disjointed, sort of looking back at it with a critical eye, perhaps. But yeah. But of course, we got Q, who is, I mean, it's got to be one of Trek's most iconic characters now.
Oh, by far.
Yeah.
By far. And it's one of those things that really surprised at some point that when they made the Star Trek films that they didn't actually do a Q movie. I mean, yes, you could say All Good Things was um, a Q movie. But,
Hmm.
for hardcore fans, a Q feature film with the Next Generation cast could have been interesting because he could have done all fantastical things with that.
Yeah, I mean, a movie where Q is in it, yes, I can get behind it. A movie where Q was the focus or the central character, that's a bit more difficult because the trouble with omnipotent beings is they can do whatever they like. So where's your drama? Where's your tension?
You
You just
cripple
snap his fingers and change it.
him.
Yeah.
You break his
Uh,
fingers, he can't snap them.
Spoiler alert for Picard, for people who haven't seen that yet. Uh, yeah, no, you've got a little bit of, before we get into the good, bad, and bad shit, you've got a bit of show and tell for us, haven't you?
Yeah, going back to our teenage years.
Wish
I
I
mean, I was
could.
always I was always a big fan of the Star Trek novels. So I had anytime there's a novelization came out, I was straight there with them. From big motion picture and stuff onwards. So I do have the original, pop this in the center there, the original first pressing, the first American pressing of the Encounter at Farpoint novel, which is a novel by David Gerald, who he did most. Everybody knows him from The Trouble with Tribbles and More Tribbles, More Troubles. He was a story writer on the original series and the animated series, and he was brought in by Gene Roddenberry essentially to write the Bible for the next generation.
Hmm.
And he got pretty short shrift, bless him. He did so much of the build-up work to the next generation, and he doesn't get credited enough for the work that he actually did. And he was promised a executive position. He was promised a producer position. He got shafted. He ended up leaving, in the first season. But he actually got to do the novelization of Farpoint. And you're going to give us the usual 1 minute
I will be giving
thing.
you a 1 minute
But
synopsis.
but what I'm going to do, instead of doing that, I shall actually read the bump from the back of the novel, and you'll see there's something slightly different on it.
Okay, well,
So
we
here
won't
we go.
apply a timer to this.
Okay, so space, the final frontier. These are the all-new voyages of the USS Enterprise. Gene Roddenberry, the man who created the original Star Trek television series, now brings the magic of Star Trek to a brand new, even more exciting future. A future with a dazzling new starship and a whole new cast of Star Trek characters. Encounter at Farpoint. Captain's log, stardate 41254.7. The USS Enterprise NCC 1701D is en route to Cygnus 4. Yeah, written before. This was
Yeah.
out before it was actually, months before. The edge of the known galaxy. There we will rendezvous with the ship's new first officer and other command personnel and proceed with our mission. Discover the truth about Farpoint Station, a starbase facility built by the inhabitants of Cygnus 4, a starbase of unparalleled size and complexity and infinite mystery. And the success or failure of this, our first mission together, may well determine the course of human exploration across the galaxy for centuries to come. Does that sound like
Mm.
close?
Yeah, I mean, you can see the sort of the skeleton of it. You can
Yeah,
see
so I mean,
the,
this
yeah.
obviously the novelization was based on one of the earlier drafts of the pilot because it
Mm.
had to be ready to be in the bookshops for launch of the series.
Yeah. Fantastic. And did you mention they've corrected that since?
I think in the books, in the reprints that they've actually followed, I think they've actually corrected it to the Deneb system.
Right, right. So you've got like I suppose the Trek equivalent of that stamp where the aeroplane's upside down.
Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So
Um,
how much do you remember of it coming out? Because in the UK, we had a different
mm,
schedule because we were lucky because back in the day we went to Time Slip in Newcastle, which was the precursor to Forbidden Planet. So that's where we got our like sci-fi magazines and things from. So
mm,
that's where we got a lot of knowledge about what was coming out. So, I collected the DC Star Trek comics at the time and things like Starburst and Starlog and all that. So there was a good big build up to Next Generation, but we didn't get it on UK television on BBC Two until it was well into season three in America.
yeah.
Because CIC Video, which is an amalgamation of Universal and Paramount, they release people. They decided to release the series on home video and the rental market first.
Yes. Yes. In cardboard sleeves. That's how well I remember it.
Yeah, because we used to. I mean, I remember getting it was a video. One of the video rental places in Sunderland were the only local place to us who actually carried the Next Generation series in. So you'd be hanging around and hoping that somebody was bringing Farpoint back. So there's a couple of missions there to try and get it as soon as it came out. And then
Y-
they were just. I don't think they released them. The video cassettes weren't in order, and the episodes were
mm.
spliced together into two parters. But I remember finally getting hold of the Farpoint, grabbing it in my hand and running running home on the bus, get it straight into the video cassette, elbowing the rest of the family out of the way because I had some new Star Trek to watch.
Um, yeah, I remember watching it on TV when it came out. Um, I mean, my memory is a bit shot from that whole childhood thing.
I've got a
I bet,
feeling, did we not, did you and Mikey not come round to Maine and we
might well
watched
have
it at
done.
Maine?
Might well have done. That's ringing a bell. That is ringing a bell.
I think we did.
Hmm. Hmm. But my yeah, I don't. My memory is a bit. I do remember us talking really enthusiastically. It's an episode, a few episodes in, when you get to see all the phasers firing and photon torpedoes galore all at once, and it looked absolutely phenomenal and amazing. Back in the day, I remember us talking enthusiastically about that. Uh, but that's yeah. Yeah, sort of. I remember the episode, but yeah, I could well have been at your
But
place.
it was a big thing
That
for us because
sounds
I mean
right.
we're banging to the movies and everything at the time, and the excitement that we actually had some new Star Trek,
Mm.
and not knowing at the time the kind of phenomenon that Next Generation was going to become.
No. Well, I think I think we recognised it as a really big deal at the time. Probably more so than Patrick Stewart did when he was filming
Yeah.
it. But yeah, we definitely recognised it as a really big deal. And like you say, it's sort of being behind America. It had probably sort of become established by the time we saw it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had that sort of foundation to look at it on. Hmm. Exciting. And when we're talking about things like Sunderland and Newcastle, just so that everybody's sort of aware geographically, Craig and I grew up in Washington, which is halfway between Sunderland and Newcastle, and ergo, right in the middle of the turf war, basically.
In the northeast of England.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, not in America. Not that Washington. Um,
UK,
yeah,
Planet Earth, Sol, Sector 001.
because the whole thing, like Ayton Village in Washington, where I lived, basically depending on what side of the road you lived, was whether you lived in Sunderland or Newcastle. It was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
footballer.
Territorial wars. Anyway, we won't get into that. That's not what we're here for. Let's get into our good, bad, and bad choices. So let's have your first good thing.
I loved the move to the 24th century. The
Right.
bold statement that we're moving forward, we're stepping away or sidestepping the Kirk era so they can continue to do what they're doing for as long as they're going to still go. But move it forward, move the design aesthetics, the production design, move everything to the next level.
Hmm.
And I think they succeeded massively in that. And it was really good idea to move away from what had been established so far and to update it, yet
Hmm.
still be true to the ethos of what's gone before.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think it was a really clever move because visual technology had moved on so much that you could sort of explain it by saying, "Oh yes, well it was 100 years later." You see, that was my Patrick Stewart impression. Yeah, not that he ever says that, but yeah, yeah. No, I think that's an absolute cracking one and a fantastic observation. Um, I've gone with a much more obvious one. Q.
That's my second one. Go on.
So yeah, the whole I mean, basically, like a trickster god, his cryptic threats, his over-the-top theatrical performance. I mean, John Delancey is a classic sort of theatre actor, so it's over the top, and it works for Q so very well. Yeah, love Q.
Oh yeah. And to be fair, Q and Farpoint is a very early version of him.
Mm,
You know, as he develops over the series, um, he grows so much as a character. And
yeah,
I don't know if the case if he gets defanged a bit later on. Um, but he's a good adversary. And say John Delancey is just delicious. He loves that role, and you can see he
yeah,
loves that role. And the just the banter over in Farpoint again, and over the years between him and Picard, right up until Picard season two.
mm,
It grows.
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. So he's your second one as well. So.
yeah.
I'll jump
So
straight to my second one then. The Enterprise D itself. You're going to tell me now this is your third one.
no,
No, okay,
no,
good. So the
no,
Enterprise D, it feels like a real ship. Now, interestingly, I now look back on it and I look back at the scale, and yes, there's 1,000 people on board, and that's how big it is. Actually, 1,000 people would fit in a very small
tiny
section
part of it. Yeah,
of
yes, yeah,
the Enterprise. It's that huge. But nevertheless, it feels like a big ship. It feels like a city in space. And it feels everything works, everything has a function to it. There's no like the set dressing isn't there for dressing, it's there for functionality. And yet it feels luxurious as well. It's kind of yeah, it's got everything.
yeah. I'll. Yeah, yeah. I'm going to be a little bit contradictory. I think the
Ooh.
functionality. I think everything that you've said is right, and I think it goes back to the production design because the guys like Andy Probert and the rest of the guys who have worked on Next Generation and the guys who worked on Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, they understood Star Trek. They understood how the ships work. They understood the layout of the ships. How something that a lot of modern Trek the people don't seem to appreciate as much.
Mm,
Um, but however, I'm going to sneak in my one of my bads here, right? Because one of my
mm,
bads I've put actually is the Enterprise D. And the reason being is I don't think she's that pretty a starship. I mean, if you go back to Andy Probert's first line drawing of her, that was thrown underneath Gene Roddenberry's nose, she is kind of 99% of the way there in design, but she's smoother. She's got more of a um cleaner lines on her rather than it
mhm.
being grey and blocky. she's just she's more curvy. And I think if they'd kept with that aesthetic a bit more, and she was more like white in the color of the Aztecing and stuff like that of the um, motion picture era Enterprise, she would have been
Mm.
prettier. I mean, I love the Enterprise E. I love the Enterprise E more than I love the
Hmm.
D. But I just don't. I like the Enterprise D, but I don't love her.
Right.
So
Right.
that's so I've leapfrogged there and put one of my negative, one of my bads in, just link with that. But I'll go to my next good.
Okay, but viewers, you heard it here first. I like the D. Craig doesn't like the
I
D.
don't not like I just don't love her. There's a difference. I like her, but I don't love her.
No, but that makes a great quote.
Yeah, never tell your wife about your girlfriend kind of thing. Yeah.
Never tell your girlfriend that you like the D.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
I would say my third like is more like a third love is the characters and the
Mm,
actors behind them because this was the last cast next to the original that Gene Roddenberry picked.
yeah.
And I know he was almost dead against Patrick Stewart being cast, but
Mm,
we'll forgive him
mm,
that. But everybody from Patrick Stewart down to Will Wheaton via Denise Crosby, even in the pilot, they have become such cultural icons and
yeah.
they inhabit their character so well. And with Farpoint, I mean, Primarina Circus, Troy was just I don't think Troy was really serviced that well till much later in Next Generation, and then properly given something meaty in Picard. Um, but no, I think the casting and the characters they were so, and they say they're so iconic, and you've got to love them one and all. And the idea of getting a Klingon in the bridge, go on.
Interesting. So mentioning about Marina like Deanna Troy, I honestly think we don't start to take Deanna Troy until Jellicoe,
Mm, yeah,
and getting her in a uniform.
getting a uniform. Yeah.
You know, I think that makes the world of not just the uniform, but I think the writing evolved around that time as well, quite dramatically. So yeah. Okay, okay. Well, mine is not dissimilar, but also it goes in a different direction in that my third good pick is Patrick Stewart as Captain Picard. So yes, a character, but like you said, the one that Gene Roddenberry was most against. Although a caveat to that one, I love the fact that so when Patrick Stewart first auditions this, you're no doubt aware of this, Craig. He wore his wig, he wore a cheap wig because that was the only one he could get to the audition in time.
Yeah.
And he wore the wig, and it didn't look very good, but he did the audition. And they're like, oh, for God's sake, like, get rid of the wig. So like, he came back, got rid of the wig, did the audition. I think it was the recall without the wig. And they were like, a lot of people were like, oh, yeah, he's great. Like you say, Gene Roddenberry was less convinced. But once they decided on him, they started talking about a wig, and Gene Roddenberry was against that idea. And I love this about Gene Roddenberry because people said, but surely by the 24th century, we'd have a cure for baldness. And he said, no, by the 24th century, nobody would care.
Yes.
And I do love that. I love that about Gene. I like that he stuck up for it. I mean, obviously I have a personal
Personally.
stake in this.
But yeah,
Uh,
wasn't it Bob Justman who saw Patrick Stewart at I don't know was it a talk or a performance in Los
it,
Angeles and
it,
he clocked him straight away and saying this is our captain.
it was at one of the big universities, wasn't it?
Mm,
And yes, he was brought on. I think he was brought in by the lecturer. I forget who the lecturer was now. But yeah, he was brought in by the lecturer to read some Shakespeare, like just do a reading from a lecture, not really a performance as such. But yeah, obviously being an RSC. actor. Shakespeare was Patrick's go-to. So yeah, um, yes, that was. Yeah, I
And
forget
the
which.
you
Oh,
know the
what's
gamble
the actor's
that
name?
they took to get him, the gamble that the studio took to back it up.
Mm,
Uh, it's if you got something now where a lot of decisions are made by committee and things like that, a lot of stuff like that might not have actually got through.
yeah,
But
yeah.
here, when you've got somebody on a mission,
Mm.
and just look what happened.
And thanks to that, we've now had a bald Yorkshireman as the sexiest man in America. So there's hope for me yet. But
Yes,
yeah, Patrick Stewart. I mean, well, what can you say? He's just like he's got the gravitas. He's got the yeah,
yes.
love Pat.
Who doesn't? So that's your third love, and
That's my
I've
third.
dived on my first bad. So
Y-
your first bad is
So my first bad is so it's sort of alluded to a little bit earlier. Is the pacing. So being a total of basically 90 minutes once you take out all the ad breaks and things like that and credits. I feel it drags in places. The Farpoint mystery and Q's trial feel disjointed. It doesn't. It's not it's not seamless.
doesn't quite
Um,
flow.
and yeah, the Q's trial being sort of bolted onto it would make a lot of sense to that. Yeah, it doesn't feel cohesive. That's the word I was desperately trying to look for.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that affects the pacing.
yeah. My second one is actually quite close to what yours is, and I just think the episode is actually quite badly executed. I think the direction and lighting and stuff on it aren't very good. It's
Mm,
very, very clunky. I think it's so exposition heavy because here's a new character. Here's what this character does. He has all the foibles of this character. Here's all let's just shoehorn, shoehorn, shoehorn. And it's not particularly natural.
yeah.
You've got the bit. I mean, there's certain things in it where certain stuff just doesn't make sense. The fact that Riker is Picard's new first officer, yet he's never met him before and doesn't know anything particularly about him.
Mm.
Flagship of the Enterprise, you'd not think the captain would be picking his own first officer. But there's just stuff like that, and there's some nice scenes in it,
Mm.
where Riker's going to find data on the holodeck. Oh, let's show the holodeck. Oh, let's express what data is. But then you're asking data if he wants to go on the mission. You're his
Mm.
commanding officer. It's stuff like this where it's done to be done to put the bricks into place, but it's not naturally done.
Yeah.
It's just clunky and just exposition heavy, and it it's spoiler alert. They don't do this on Deep Space Nine.
They don't. Absolutely. Although, to be fair, Cisco doesn't pick his first officer either.
Yeah, but that's for different reasons.
We'll be coming on to that in a future episode, though. So my second bad is not it's not dissimilar, and I think it kind of comes from a similar place. I've got down that the supporting characters are basically badly written. They're weak one-trick ponies.
Yes.
Um, Troy, Wesley. I mean, I love the concept of Wesley. Um, Absolutely, but they've got over exaggerated quirks that just like I've got this one thing about me and that's what I'm gonna do. And when Troy's in the Bandy City, oh, she's actually in the station underground in the tunnels, and she's going, oh, pain, pain. I mean, yeah, I love Marina Sirtis, but that wasn't her greatest
It isn't,
moment.
but to be fair, they're playing the cards that they were dealt. It was a pilot of something with so big, with such ambition and such big stress that, if this is going to fail, it's going to fail big. And
Yeah.
it's,
It's always difficult in a pilot. The characters, unless it's a pilot where it's on the back of something else, the characters are not established. Nobody really knows who these characters are, and the actors in particular. When you've been in a role for a long time, you can start saying to the director, "No, no, my character would do this, or they do it this way," and sort of the directors, the producers tend to trust the actors a lot more as they get into it. But initially. Nobody really knows who these characters are, so you tend to get these forced moments quite a lot. And
this
TNG
leads,
suffered
yeah,
from it.
but this leads back to what I was saying about the bad execution and the bad direction of it,
Mm,
is that Corey Allen, who directed the pilot, there's so much that rides on a pilot episode's director because they set the tone, they set so many like points that the rest of the series and the rest of the directors have to follow, and they are a lot more involved.
mm.
And in case if you think, well, was he necessarily the best choice for it? Did he make some of the right decisions? And I don't want to poop on somebody's parade or anything, but they could have done with somebody bigger and better as a director for the pilot episode to get it more under control.
I I agree, but the studio didn't have the confidence to put the money behind it.
I mean, they put a lot of money behind it,
They put a
but
lot, but yeah, they weren't going to go
hedged the
all
bets a
out.
bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
hedged the
yeah,
bets a bit. So
yeah.
my third one is close to yours. Is
Hmm.
Groppler Zone. Rubbish, absolutely freaking awful. The whole see the concept of the Bandai City and the concept of the Bandai trapping the creature and everything that was just so badly executed.
Yeah.
You know, and he's the head of a council who you don't see the rest of a council, and he's
Hmm.
just and how they think that they're going to get away with what they're trying to get away with. Just no. Let's go back, think about it a little bit more, and again, it's just I think there was so much going on trying to establish everything that they just didn't polish things enough.
I think there's an element of that. I also think I've forgotten the name of the actor who played Groppler's Own. He's
Yeah,
quite a
I
famous
forget.
actor as well. He's quite well known. Okay, I'll put a comment in the when I'm editing, say who it is. But, he's a fine actor, but nobody knew what this pilot thing was going to actually be. Nobody knew what flavor it was or anything like that. So yes, I would agree with that. Mainly because that's my third one as well. Unimpressive antagonist apart from Q.
Apart
Q
from
was
Q, yeah.
great.
I mean,
But
if you
yeah,
if you think if that episode had been how it was going to be as a 1 hour one rather than a 2 hour one,
mm,
it would have been goddamn awful.
yeah, yeah. The bandy, yeah, remarkably unmemorable. Um, and that's an interesting. So there's in Groppler's office, there's a stained glass window off up to the sort of behind to his side. And it says Zorn in it. Now, you'll remember, like the TV, the resolution back in the day, that would never have been seen. And there's a lot of stuff in the next generation that was never intended to have been seen that we can now make out quite clearly with 4K TVs. Uh,
And standing far too close to the screen, you'll go blind.
yes, yes. Well, moving very swiftly from many comments about that. Yeah, so yeah, we're in agreement on our number three. So what was back crazy for you about this?
It's a back crazy, but it's a good back crazy.
Hmm.
Dr. Leonard McCoy still being alive at 140 years old. I mean, I know the lifespan thing, but Oh, that was just nuts to see. I mean, it's great to see him,
Yeah.
but absolutely nuts. And also the fact of the matter when they introduce him, they say, "Oh, there's somebody been on board the ship all day." So he's been around, hanging around when this kind of Q stuff's been going on, and
Mm.
he doesn't tear data a new one for like what the hell's been going on here.
Yes, yes, and of course, DeForest, that was kept a massive
Massive
secret,
secret, yeah.
because DeForest said, like, I do not want to be in any promotional material or anything like. He insisted really strongly in that, which is really kind of nice, I
Yeah.
think.
I mean the makeup's a bit rubbish on him, but just the fact that he's there and you've got some connecting tissue between the original
Yeah.
series and the next generation, which they did try to avoid in a lot of respects over in the first couple of years.
Mm.
But yeah, to be fair, I think it would have been better if they didn't make him look that much older because they say 140. Yeah, Spock's still alive, you know. Mm.
Well, that's it, and I mean, you say the makeup was bad. Again, the resolution, the intended way, or the way it was intended to be viewed, it was fine. It
Yeah.
was, it was fine. But you say they
But
tried
it's
to
back to
steer
how they got
away
away
from
with it.
it. Look at the next episode when they basically do a
Remake.
TOS episode. But yeah, anyway. Uh, so my first back crazy one is Hugh's wardrobe. I mean, you're getting basically almost like the entire history of the humanity, which is great, and a really clever sort of expositional background to humanity and where humanity's come from and beyond
Yeah.
where we are today. Really, really nice way of doing it, and yeah, it shows his flair for the dramatic, and yeah, his costumes theatrical. I
Okay.
like it. What's your
Have you?
second, Cray?
My second batch is the saucer separation.
I've got exactly the
Now,
same for my second.
now, the concept of the saucer separation is good. The concept of the saucer separation even goes back to original series
It
and stuff like
does.
that is great. But in the next generation, the way they use it as a concept doesn't work. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So you're
Mm,
going to separate the star drive section with the warp drive and all the power and not all the armaments. And the source of separation. So if the ship's in danger, the saucer's going to get away. Okay, the saucer does not have warp drive.
mm,
It's got phasers. It's got a phaser array. So if there's shenanigans going on, the saucer section would need to be something that can get a sharp getaway. So it
yeah.
would be great if it had some deployable nacelles, and the saucer separation could get the civilians and everything away out of danger. But it doesn't. The battle bridge and everything like that is all in the primary hull.
Mm,
So if if you get attacked by a few ships, one distracts the battle bridge and that, and the rest just go and destroy the saucer section because it hasn't got the warp drive, it hasn't got the powerhouse of what a starship is. So realistically, the saucer separation doesn't work for that for an escape. It only works. The starship works better if it's in its complete unit because it's got power to all the weapons through the warp drive. I know
I
that's a bit nerdy, but
no, I get what you're saying. That now I always saw the saucer effectively as a big lifeboat for the civilians.
yeah,
And when you
but
think like a modern day, like a lifeboat as we have it today, off a cruise ship, well, it's not going to go as fast as a cruise ship. It's not going to, but it's just a way of keeping people alive till they can get rescued.
but if
So
you're
that's
an ex
kind of how I
yeah,
saw the
but if you're an
source section.
exploratory ship, it makes no
Hmm.
difference whether it's a lifeboat or not because if you're stranded without warp drive, you're screwed in any case.
Until you get rescued.
By who? If you're an exploratory ship.
That's a very, very good point.
You know,
That is a very good point.
how often is a starship the only ship ship in the region, in the area?
Hmm.
I mean, the captain's yacht, that's got a warp drive.
And that could probably, like, looking at the schematics of the Calypso and the size of the Calypso and the size of 1,000 people on the source section, you could probably get all 1,000 people in the
Yeah,
Calypso. It's that
yeah.
big.
But so I think the whole saucer separation thing would work if it had deployable nacelles to go into
Yeah.
warp drive. Other than that, but again, it's just you're using it as a conceit. So there, for instance, right, the Enterprise was in combat with Q,
Hmm.
and then distracted Q so the saucer section could get away. Yet they dealt with the whole Q thing, and then they got the far point before the saucer section. So surely they could have gone and picked the saucer section up on the way back to far point, rather than it having to
Yeah.
limp all the way there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was in there just to show off that
It
they
is,
could do
but just
it.
think it
Um,
through a little bit more.
yeah. I mean, it was used quite rarely during the series,
Because
but
it
when
didn't make that much sense.
yeah, but when they did use it, it was often used quite creatively, I thought.
Yeah, with Generations. Look how well that ended.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so I got the sources separate, but I love the source separate, and like you say, the original Enterprise. I think it's in the technical manual, isn't it, that
Yeah.
the sources separates. But yeah, we just never saw it. Yeah, cool. What's your third?
Uh, okay, my third is was the bombing of the Bandai city by the creature.
Right.
Oh, there's hundreds of casualties that report up to the Enterprise as the model gets destroyed, where there's actually nobody else down there apart from the two. But it's only two of them down there. And the model work on it was quite nicely done, but they
Mm,
didn't spend you didn't get any kind of any view of the Bandai city apart from the Groppler's office and the models getting damaged. There's no citizens running around. There's no
yeah.
things like that. There's no scale and no, and it's crazy that the Enterprise took so long to put itself between the city and the alien ship. It was so
Mm,
pedestrian. And it didn't it more modern Star Trek, or even slightly later in Next Generation, the first thing they would have done was to move the Enterprise between the station and the fiery ship. They wouldn't let loads of bombing and hundreds of people getting killed or wounded. It wouldn't have happened.
yeah. Yeah. I
So
absolutely agree with you on that. Um, and yet not showing. Oh, I mean, we don't want to see people so
no, you
actually
don't.
get
Yeah,
bombed, but seeing, like, people running about and all the rest of it. Without that, it doesn't feel that dramatic. It doesn't feel. It's kind of just meh.
yeah. And you don't
Okay.
care about the people on down in the city of anything like that. It's just
As we said earlier, the Bandai are not particularly.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you look at the bits where, I mean, the Bandai are so bloody stupid. The whole concept of like harnessing that creature and building a starbase, like it wasn't going to get found out straight away because
Mm.
suddenly anything that you magically thought about or wanted happens to turn up. It's like you can't just say you don't do that because like how many thousands of people are going to turn up? It's a
That's
bit, it's
it.
a bit like Looney Tunes.
That's it. Well, not unconnected to that is my third, which is the reveal that it's this giant space jellyfish
Jellyfish.
and that it's lost mate. It's kind of beautiful, but it's also like kind of funny as well. Looking back, I mean, we're looking at it through a modern lens, obviously. It's quite funny and cheesy, but it also is quite beautiful in its own way, and it was a great showcase for the visual effects at the time. It was showing what the next generation would be, which would be creatures that you could never imagine. And a giant jellyfish has got to be better than a giant green hand, right?
Oh, well, gotta love a big
Or
green hand.
a giant Lincoln. Yeah. I mean, it's
But
so very Trek, but it's also Trek at its weirdest.
yes, yes, it's possibly Trek at its clunkiest as well.
Yeah, it's all of those things. Absolutely.
But we're looking. It's funny because I keep thinking, we're looking at a modern eye, but
Mm.
also what we've got to look at, it's at the time of the feature films.
Mm.
So they did know how to make Star Trek. It's not like they've forgotten how to make Star Trek.
No, no.
Um, but it was to make Star Trek at speed and at volume.
Yeah, yeah.
And, going back with Gene and his vision rather than the slightly more militaristic and continual like storytelling of the films.
Mm. Yes. Although I mean, as you hit the nail on the head, making a film is nothing like making a TV series.
It's like one page a day as opposed to like six or seven or something, isn't it? It's
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
and you've got
One
to
page a
you've
day if you're lucky.
yeah, and you've got the turnaround time, wasn't it about 7 or 8 days per episode
It
in
was something
total to
like
do.
that.
And you don't make television series at that scale on that volume nowadays. And
No, things.
you look at the complexities, especially onto when you get onto like DS9 Voyager Enterprise, where they're even the episodes in the series get more and more complex, and
Mm.
they're still pumping out 20 to 25, 26 episodes a season. Now we're just,
Yeah, the schedules are pretty much the same now as they were. They're just making far less episodes.
I think
But
the shooting schedules are quite close, but it's the visual effects and all the additional stuff
that's
that's
yeah, it's all the stuff that happens in post is far greater. Yeah, yeah. Mm. Well, there we go. So, what do you think, viewers? Do you agree with our choices for good, bad, and back? Do you think we're way off the mark? Is there something we've completely forgotten about? Do let us
probably.
know what you think in the comments. We're bound to
I
forget
forget
something.
loads.
Absolutely. And join us next time when you won't be surprised by our pick that we'll be looking at the good, bad, and back for. Uh, in the
Oh no,
meantime,
next no 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 no. Next episode is the good, and the good. That's all I'll say.
so join us next time when we'll clearly be having a bun fight. In the meantime, peace and long life.
Live long and prosper, guys. Take care.